I don't know about you, but I often find myself in this situation. An internet trend randomly pops into my mind, like, remember fast fashion hauls? People literally bought a bunch of stuff they'd wear twice before a picture of Bella Hadid or whatever wearing something similar stops circulating online and fades into relevance. Good to know that's totally over and nobody does that anymore, right? Everyone basically either took the climate change red pill or was shamed into stepping right. In situations like this one, when I'm inevitably faced with a painful realization of just how horribly wrong I am about the state of things, it's almost as though I am exposed to the endlessness of the internet. Like I'm made aware of the infinite numbers of galaxies while I'm just staring at a tiny corner of a tiny room, or should I say a tiny chamber? The concepts of echo chambers and filter bubbles are fairly similar, at least in the online context, with the definition of the echo chamber usually implying social interaction and filter bubble usually implying more of a parasocial, one-sided consumption of content. The latter will be the most relevant to our topic of discussion for today. By the way, my name is Daria. Like and subscribe. I'll probably be posting other videos in the future.
Although who the hell knows in these increasingly strange days?
Filter bubbles are often talked about in the context of forming ideologies directly through the communication of said ideology. And I want to look at the communication of these ideologies in a sort of a meta sense, if you will. Filter bubbles on the internet not only immerse you into a restricted set of ideas you come across, but also shape how you view the imagined communicators and receptors of these ideas, and as a result, your personal reality. The term personal reality is defined very vaguely in any related sources I could find, like there are several books on the topic and not even a wiki page. They aren't making my job any easier, I'll tell you that much. Anyway, I assume we all have a kind of a intuitive understanding of the concept as an individual perception of objective reality that exists in opposition to that objective physical facts don't care about your feelings kind of reality. So it makes sense that a filter bubble would both be a reflection of one's individual reality and actually shape it. It's like a surreal, lifelong intellectual metabolism. At the same time, filter bubbles aren't purely individual. Obviously, the process by which an algorithm selects content for an individual is individual by definition, but our filter bubbles aren't detached from one another. I mean, we may consume the content privately and parasocially without actually proactively engaging with other people, but the content is still kind of there. It's usually available to all of us. We can visualize filter bubbles in a sort of a 3D Venn diagram-like way that overlaps indefinitely. And these overlaps between our filter bubbles create, if not a community, then some sort of a shared space, even if the people involved never actually communicate with one another. Thousands of people may watch a YouTube channel and never actively comment or socially engage with one another in any way. And while we may not call these people a community necessarily, at least not in a more traditional sense of the word, these people still share important connections. Their individual realities are affected by the same forces. Social reality is defined very broadly by some people on the internet as the consensus of attitudes, opinions, and beliefs held by members of a group or society. It is somewhat similar to the concept of consensus reality, which is, well, generally agreed upon reality based on the consensus view of a group of people or society in general. Social reality is also defined in an inherent opposition to objective reality. We can visualize it as an overlap of the Venn diagram between our filter bubble-induced individual realities, and it becomes this overlap through the mechanism of us observing not only the information that is contained in the online content, but also the knowledge about the content creators and communicators of said content. Let's use an example, okay? Let's say you are a left-leaning person on TikTok. Groundbreaking, I know. You've been using it for a while already, so CCP, sorry, the algorithm knows what you prefer to engage with quite well. And let's say you are interested in body positivity content and watch a lot of TikToks, often by creators who belong to marginalized groups, sharing their own ideas, the ideas they agree with. Our first layer of analysis of what's going on here would be you receive communication from content creators on the internet. They communicate their ideas to you, and your internal interpretations of said ideas to some extent shape your ideology. Our next layer of analysis would be a kind of a meta-analysis, not in a sciencey way, in a way that is an analysis that is transcending the analysis that we discussed before. You know what I mean, right? We wouldn't want to get all sciencey here. I'm a Virgo. I have no idea what that means. Basically, we'll have to take a look at what the act of communication or knowledge sharing itself does and what influence it has. So you watch these body positivity creators a lot every day, and let's say they not only communicate their ideas and share knowledge, but also share their life experience. And the presence of these creators in your information environment and their prevalence, or basically the number of them in your site, relative to the overall number of people you see and interact with, also shape your knowledge, your ideology, and perhaps more importantly, your social reality, this overlap of our personal realities. It informs your understanding of what the people in the world are like, what their lives are like, what struggles they face. There's a sociological theory that focuses primarily on learning and knowledge, developed by this dude, Lev Vygotsky. And according to this article, at least, he argued that all cognitive functions originate in and must therefore be explained as products of social interactions, and that learning did not simply comprise the assimilation and accommodation of the new knowledge by learners. It was the process by which learners were integrated into a knowledge community. As humans, we overcome the limits of our perception by imposing culturally defined sense and meaning on the world. Language and culture are the frameworks through which we humans experience, communicate, and understand reality. Vygotsky states, a special feature of human perception I'm not gonna do that, as though I don't have the Slavic accent myself. So Vygotsky states, a special feature of human perception is the perception of real object. I do not see the world simply in color and shape, but also as a world with sense and meaning. I do not merely see something round and black with two hands. I see a clock. And that seems like a reasonable framework to view knowledge through. Obviously, our social interactions and shared understandings shape our individual understanding of reality. And there's little value in the performative subjectivism of arguing endlessly whether we can ever know if a clock is a clock. The problem, though, occurs when a social interaction gets complicated by the inherent parasociality of certain media through which this interaction occurs, the algorithm by which the information gets transmitted, and the monetary incentive behind the whole thing that is divorced from any truth-seeking purpose. These influences are a part of the reason why diversity not only of ideas but also of people who communicate these ideas is important. Obviously, a member of a marginalized group doesn't always represent ideologies and political views that are in the best interest of a said marginalized group. So why bother with diversity of voices, and why not just find the rightest, smartest person who has the best ideas and encourage everyone to listen to them? Well, one of the many problems with this approach is that people's brains don't work that way. We are not just absorbers of streams of written and spoken words. When someone talks to us, we don't just listen to what they say. We also take in lots of other information, like this person's vibe and the way the act of interacting with them play into our existing view of the world and how they made us feel, and things that the very act of our interaction with this person tell us about ourselves and our social reality. Okay, so I'm gonna gaslight you into believing that nothing changed with my background and I'm totally recording this in one go. So speaking of finding the rightest person, let's step back from all this woke nonsense for a second and go back to our filter bubbles. Just like echo chamber, filter bubble is a concept with negative connotations inherent to it. Within the modern discourse, it is bad to be in a filter bubble, regardless of what's inside the bubble. Articles about filter bubbles, while obviously usually having some merit, often enter a kind of an enlightened centrist territory with the language used. Like, it's funny how almost all of the related sources that pop up to me in the Google search in my own filter bubble, one may say, that are usually liberally and almost exclusively cite traditionally right-wing ideas as causes for dangerous outcomes. Yet at the same time, in the text itself, what they're lamenting is the lack of interest in alternative media sources as opposed to the echo chambers we tend to lock ourselves in. And like, what are those alternative sources? Should I go listen to Fox News to diversify my information sources just because the one I'm exposed to are the complete opposite of Fox News? And on the other side of the political aisle are people who are the best at weaponizing pseudo-centrist optics to deflect from their own agenda, the intellectual dark web, or whatever other cringe-ass term not like other right-wingers like to call themselves nowadays. So why does algorithm bad because it indoctrinates ideas which I think are harmful gets replaced with algorithm bad because it restricts one's ability to hear the other side? Like, come on, we all decided what the harmful, undesired kind of information is for us. The weird both-side badness of the algorithm discourse deserves a video of its own, but for the purposes of this discussion, the questions I want to ask is, given the fact that anyone interacting with this video also already decided what that undesired information is, and assuming the filter bubble filters out the undesired information, what is the harm? Like, let's take our initial body positivity example. Obviously, there's a question of how we get the filter to filter the right way. But when, for whatever reason, it already has, what's the harm? Okay, you get a kind of a homogeneity of opinions, but they're like the right opinions? That is the question I couldn't possibly answer in full in this video, but one harm I can come up with has to do with political activism and coalition building. If you go back to the fast fashion haul example I used at the beginning of the video and examine this incorrect notion that I had, it's not like I think the world is officially woke now. In fact, if I had to make an assumption that is the closest to the truth with a gun to my head, I would probably say that fast fashion hauls probably are slightly less popular now than they were in their heyday, mostly due to widespread backlash due to ethical concerns, but still are fairly popular. But my initial instinct was still to go with what seems reasonable based on the information about the environment that I absorb online every day. And this almost subconscious subtlety is what makes the fact of filter bubbles so dangerous to our political awareness. Exposure to ideas similar to ours is one thing, but exclusive exposure to people with similar beliefs creates an impression that our social media feed is how society is. It creates our social reality, and we don't even notice that. At least not as much as with direct communication. I can consciously acknowledge that I consume a lot of information with a certain underlying ideology. I'm much less likely to consciously acknowledge that I have a vague feeling that a world is a certain way because of what people I see online look like. And if the world is like this, if it does consist of people of similar beliefs, just as my filter bubble subtly makes me believe, there's no need to win allies, right? At least no critical, urgent need. We're kind of past that. Now we need to engage in discourse among our partisans and find the rightest answers to all the questions to change the world for the better. When I put it like this, it sounds kind of dumb, maybe because I'm dumb, but I like to believe that it's mostly because rationally we all understand that this is not the case, at least for the people on the left side of the political spectrum. We didn't win globally, even enough to turn at least a third of the world into a proper social democracy. If you ask me, it kind of seems like we are actively losing at this point in time. Yet in the left-wing political discourse, it sometimes seems as though the question of which flavor of socialism is the bestest is relevant and has practical implications for the foreseeable future. Or that over-analyzing statements into oblivion to inevitably find supposed problematic implications that expose the ideologically impure as a worthwhile pursuit. The right knows, by the way, how to weaponize this feature of filter bubbles and social reality construction. They constantly employ fear-mongering and purposefully instill a distorted view of the world to increase political engagement. They know that assuming everyone is already on your side doesn't inspire people to go to rallies and vote in booths. That is why they spend millions of dollars trying to make your uncle feel like everyone is out to get him with vaccines and transgenderism. Okay, so what do we do? Is reading the comment section under the Andrew Tate videos the antidote? Should we all get our healthy dose of a QAnon forum thread to get in touch with reality? I don't think so. At least I hope not. And there's obviously nothing wrong with engaging with theory or philosophical discussions that are divorced from any sort of immediate utilitarian impact. I'm also not advocating for immunity from criticism for allies. What I would advocate for is having clear priorities, understanding your political goals, being cognizant of the externally enforced cognitive distortions, and touching grass. Seriously, filter bubbles aren't going anywhere anytime soon, and there's no way around just spending less time in them. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my groundbreaking conclusions just now. Like, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff if you want me to get an actual camera, and also to hear me ramble about whatever I am interested in. Bye, everyone. I don't know how to end this. Everyone basically either took the climate change red pill or was shamed into stepping right. This is Bershka, by the way. This is different. 7 years old. I was a different person back then.